You are listening to the What a Word podcast, an interview-style podcast where guests bring their unique experiences and insight on culture, life's challenges, and faith. Each episode is seasoned with words which will inspire and encourage. Now, here is your host, Ryan Sharp.
Thank you for joining me for another installment of the What a Word podcast. I'm excited today. I have the privilege and the honor to be joined by someone else who sheds light in darkness. She's also a podcast host. My guest today is Shay Cèna, poet at heart, 2 times author, creative, and she's also the host and creator of She Discovered podcast. She joins me today, Brooklyn Roots, and she'll join to share about her journey. And I told her at the beginning when we started that I'm trying to contain myself. I have so much to cover, and I promised her that we would do this all within an hour. So please join me in welcoming my guest, Shay Cèna, to the What a Word podcast. Welcome, Shay.
Thank you, Ryan. I appreciate it. I appreciate your kind words. I'm a person that loves to connect with other human beings. So I appreciate the fact that you even reached out to me to come on and share my light and share the work that I've done. So thank you for that.
Most welcome, most welcome. I told my daughter I had an opportunity to go on your page. I think you were setting up the stage. I think that video showed the premiere of your podcast. And I said that whole intro, I need somebody to do that for me. But there's so much more about what you do that I've embraced, and I'm honored to have you. You have inspiring conversations. You also have what I like to call difficult but needed conversations in your podcast space as well. So I'm honored that you would join me. But before getting all into it, I want to ask you, Shay, what are you grateful for in this season?
I love that question because I don't know if you're familiar with the reggae artist by the name of Coffee. And she has this song called Toast, right? And she says, gratitude is a must. And I love that because I'm just like, that's how we should live our daily lives, not just in season, right? Like, oh, this is the season I need to be, grateful or have a spirit of gratitude. It should be continuous. So I guess I would say, not trying to be cliche in the sense of like family, friends, or whatever. I think I am grateful in this space right now to fully be my truest self without any apology. But with that said, there are times that we feel like, oh, let me just be myself. This is what you get, without leaving room for correction or growth or molding. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying I'm happy to be in a space where I have the space to reflect on myself, be my fullest and truest self in every space, and be in the space also to accept correction, either it be by the Spirit of God, either it be by family members or my tribe, I like to say. Because for so long, sometimes I felt like I was living in other people's opinions about me, or even based on my insecurities, trying to live up to what I believe would make me acceptable to individuals. But I'm grateful, and I'm grateful for the Most High, just the work that he's done in me for all this time, that I could be right now where I'm like, man, I am adoring the woman I'm becoming. So I'm grateful for that. I'm grateful for the woman I'm becoming.
Powerful, powerful. Brooklyn College graduate, majoring in television and broadcasting. Child to Haitian parents, poet. Did you experience a lot of tension in trying to find your way career-wise and even your passions and pursuits?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yes. I think that's a part of my story and what I just said, right? Figuring out who I am unapologetically, And of course, with Caribbean parents or Haitian parents, or sometimes even African parents or Indian, the list goes on in certain cultures. When you say, I want to be on TV, I want to be on radio, it's like, wait, what happened to doctor? What happened to lawyer? What happened to even teacher? I'll take that. I'll take nurse, But for me, my parents, after a while, they knew that they could not contain that in me. I was a very outgoing child, although shy. But once I started getting into high school and college, they saw my love for media. I used to look at Barbara Walters and say, I want to sit, I want to interview people. Once I got into college, I was just like, oh, I want to work for MTV and BET. I want to do entertainment interviewing. So doing that, however, yeah, there were some up and downs with that, where you're trying to find your way in the media realm, doing internships and all of that. But there came a halt in my life where I had a spiritual journey and spiritual conversion. So I felt that God was saying, no media, that is not of God, get away from it. So for a long time, I didn't tap into that. But I believe God was still saying that this is a part of you. This is a part of your light. I just need to mold it in where it needs to be. It doesn't need to be canceled out. So, there was a time that I went to California. I did an internship on how to do media, but ministry wise. And I did that. So that's where I learned editing. That's where I learned video production, the beauty of documentary work, which I love, love, love. So for a while, it was a lot of figuring out. And then there was a time where I just didn't do anything media. I went and I tapped into administration work. I've been doing that for a long time. But the love of media never left me. It constantly would show its head. And I'm a poet, so I always used to love how I always used to love writing how I felt, either it be through relationships, through anger, through anything. And then based on that, I was just like, man, maybe I should write a poetry book. That's how one of the poetry books came about, right? And then after that, I was just like, I want to do more. So I did a visual poetry, which is called Lover and Partner, which is on YouTube. And it's talking about my love for Christ and the Father, but my love and desire to be in a relationship, right? And what that would look like. But also after that, during the pandemic, friends would always tell me, Shay, you need to be on YouTube. Shay, you need to do this. Shay, your personality. And I'm like, I don't know. Because a part of me felt, who am I? And where do I fit in this big technology world that we're in right now? Everybody has a YouTube page or whatever. Who am I? But during the pandemic, ideas would just flow through my mind. And I was in a process of growing. And I'm like, man, I'm discovering so much. And then it just came where I was like, what if I just had a show and I just started talking about everything that I was discovering about myself and the people around me? She Discovered came about. I said, okay, I could do a podcast as a hobby. I'll do it for a season or two just to get these stories out of me. One season became 2 seasons, 2 seasons became 3 seasons, 4 seasons, and now I'm going into season 5. And as I continued to do it, and people were giving their responses to what they were hearing and the work that I was doing, I felt the passion return, where I don't mind staying up 2:00 in the morning and doing this because I love it, right? And based on that, I realized I do have a space in this media world. I do have a space in technology, in this technology era, I should say. And I think I love this era to a certain extent that we don't have to wait for a TV station to pick us up. We don't have to wait for a radio station to pick us up. We can create our own space through YouTube, through podcasting. So based on that, I'm just like, no, I have something to say. And I will continue to ask the Most High to continue to guide me on what I should say, what I should do. Where is this going? I'm still in that process to be like, where is this going? Because it has to have a bigger purpose. But so far, I've seen how it has touched the lives of people or has caused people to start thinking differently about certain topics, or it being a discovery for them, So I love that. And of course, a new thing emerged. Growing up in Brooklyn, and not only Brooklyn, 80s baby, 90s era, lover of 90s hip hop, 90s R&B. So yes, there was a certain time that I stayed away from that. And that's a whole different topic of my spiritual journey. But once I came back to that and kind of filtered what I listened to or not listened to, but I fell back into the love of hip hop and R&B and all these different kind of things. And long and behold, a friend got, brought me to the opportunity of doing a freestyle. And I'm just like, I don't know about that, but I know what I was capable of in the sense of like, put a song in front of me and I'm a jukebox. I hear it once or twice and I can recite it real quick. You know what I mean? Me and my family always do what we call karaoke. We're in the car and we spit in rap and we spit in music and we're doing all these things. So I know we're going to touch base on that in the future of this episode. But yeah, I was surprised at myself that now within the category of poet, podcaster, and creative, I can actually say that I did a rap freestyle. I even shocked myself. So yeah, that's kind of been my journey through the whole media realm, to tell you the truth.
I like that, man. The thing that strikes me about poetry is stillness of the author, stillness and analysis. You are taking the time to break things down. Did you get early encouragement once you discover that that is something that you like from teachers even? Because it sounds like creative writing may be the first cousin that leads to poetry, but I don't know what your journey was like. Could you amplify what your journey was like for us in terms of poetry?
In school, no, because I didn't really express that in school. It was more in my like private moments. I would say the catalyst for me really falling in love with poetry would be the show Def Poetry Jam. That one, I was just like, what is this world of spoken word and poetry? And I started reading poetry books like Maya Angelou, Langston Hughes. Even certain artists started coming out with their own poetry book. Tupac, The Rose That Grew from Concrete, Jill Scott, Alicia Keys. I was reading all those things. But I would say even before that, my father, who was, and I say was because he passed away in 2007, he was a lover of books, right? So of course, as his daughter, he's going to give me books to read and so forth. And I remember he gave me the book Helen Keller, her biography, the woman that was both deaf and blind. And he also gave me a thesaurus alongside that. And I remember just reading the thesaurus in the sense of like, man, one word can mean so many multiple different things. And how do you define this word? And then also reading Helen Keller, although it was a biography, there was something that was very poetic about her story. And I think that's what started the engine in my mind for the love of poetry. And for me, when I felt I wanted to express myself, I would write it down. And then watching Def Poetry Jam, I was like, oh, this is an art. There's rhyming, there's metaphors, there's all different type of things. And when I say I loved hip hop growing up, when you think of hip hop or rap is basically rhythm and poetry, right? It's just poetry in a rhythmic and a audible, way. So for that, I think all those elements and components, just formulated my love for poetry, spoken word. And I never thought it would go as far as it is now, but I thought it was something that would end, when I was in college. But I realized no matter what phase in my life I was in, writing it out either through story or either through poem was the way that I could, heal or grow from things.
Shay, there's so much you've unpacked, and I want to get to all the way of freestyle soon. I want to get to it because there's so many lines in that I want you to amplify for me. But I think what you offer in this space, and I said a little in the intro, but I want to give you your flowers early, is that I'm a church boy as well. And when I listen to your podcast, a lot of the discussions for me represents what would have happened if, say, the youth ministry grew up with the young adults. You know what I'm saying?
Yes, yes.
So in other words, and I love all of it. I love the fact that we have um, ministry that's catered to a certain developmental stage. But very often, I wonder in my own private moments, what happens to all of those young women and men who grew up in ministry, who are not necessarily considered the sages or the mentors necessarily, or the older folks, but who've grown up in ministry, who are dealing with respective challenges that they need a space, a safe space to discuss those. And if no one has heard, if you haven't heard the She Discovered podcast, Shay has done an extensive series on sexuality.
Yeah.
Which is, as you well know, is taboo for many people, but you are addressing a lot of uncomfortable issues. What led you in that space as you discovered your own discovery?
I'll go back a little bit to something you mentioned, and I'll come back to this. Going back to what you asked, if I had any type of encouragement when it came to poetry or media. In the beginning, it was my own thing. And then eventually my friends saw this talent, and not the talent of poetry, just the talent of being a creative. They saw that, Shay, you have something in you that I don't know what it is. Either you have to be on TV, on radio, whatever it is, people need to see you and experience you. And thank you for all those individuals, my family and friends that saw that in me when I didn't see it in myself. For my family, or my parents, I should say, they saw it, but they were like, how are you going to make a living based on that? Right. But eventually when they saw that I would not let up, and yes, I had roller coasters where they were like, what are you doing with your life? Right. But then eventually I would say with my mother, she saw it being consistent to the point that fast forward now with the podcast, she's such a fan. This woman is such a fan of my podcast. She listens to my episodes. And in her Haitian accent, she just be like, I can't wait to see my baby become Oprah. Like, you know what I mean? Like for her, she's the one who's bigging me up now, where she's just like, it's in you. And I see the discussions that you're having. So to fast forward with what you're asking with the sexuality series, that was certain things that I was discovering about myself also within my 30s, because I'm 38. And in my mind, I was like, man, yes, we have social media, we have different shows and movies that talk about these things, but I want to have a mixture of how often do we talk about women's voices in sexuality? How often do we talk about how taboo sex is in church? How often do we talk about the dangers of pornography? We talk about how it affects the mind, right? And it's addictive. But do we talk about what goes on behind the scenes? Do we talk about in the midst of addiction, not only do we watch it a lot, but at the same time, this is how it affects our sex lives in and outside of marriage, church people, non-church people, right? And it's funny, as I was doing these researching and, of the topics and who the guests would be, more and more things were coming to me that the season didn't even plan out how I planned it. There was some switcheroos that had to happen because I had to go with the flow with not only the responses I was getting, that I had to add new episodes where women in church were like, we want to hear more that resonate with us. How do we deal with abstinence and virginity? How do we deal with our hormones while still trying to keep our morals and principles? We need more of that talk. So all of those things were just based on what I was seeing around me, the questions I had for myself, the frustrations I had for myself, specifically when it comes to women's or females' sexual awareness about our bodies, about we have a say-so in the bedroom as well, the emotional abuse that takes place in the bedroom. You don't have to rape me for me to feel like I was taken advantage of. You could just tell me that when I want something, you could disregard it. You could make me feel degraded just based on certain positions and certain things that you do that maybe for another woman that's not degrading, but for me, based on my sexual preferences, it's not comfortable. But you as a man deem it, no, you should like this. That also is emotional abuse to me because now I have to deal with that trauma, right? So all of that said, I knew I had something on my hands when, again, my mom came to me and she thanked me for that episode. She said, in my generation, at the age I was growing up, we didn't talk about sex like that. And again, I said it in the episode, shout out to my mom who from a young age, she spoke about sex with me because she was like, you're not going to learn it from someone else. You're going to learn it home first. Granted, there's certain things they didn't cover that I did learn outside, but she made it her duty to set the foundation. So yeah, with the sex series, instead of just doing one episode here or there, I decided to dedicate a whole series or a whole season to the sexuality talk.
Man, I want to sit here for a second because Shay, I want to ask you honestly, man, with being a voice for the voiceless, and you've had some really great speakers who've come on and articulated what a lot of not just young women feel, but men as well, who've come on and been transparent. But Roe versus Wade and the overturning by the Supreme Court must have been so deflating after it more or less confirmed a lot of what you've pointed out in some of these episodes, that there is a desire to control the minds and bodies of women, you know, in every space.
Yeah, very much so. And I have to say, and I say it all the time, but again, in every space that I can, I have to thank my guests, because my guest is also what contributes to my podcast. My episodes wouldn't be my episodes without my guests, so thank you to them as well.
Wow. El Brooklyn, true to the game, like 2 for 10 on the app, the real Fulton. I mentioned before the all the way up freestyle. Good friend of mine, Mike O, lyrical wordsmith in his own right.
Yes.
But like I said, when I saw that clip, I'm like, Shay is not just happy to be here. She bars. Talk to me about that moment. What led to your jumping on this all the way up freestyle and speaking your truth?
So the way this happened, right? So I have a bucket list, and on my bucket list, I said, I want to do a rap video one day. Either it's me or I'm featured on someone. And I just wrote it there, not thinking it may not happen, because how am I going to do a rap video? How am I going to get on a rap video? But hey, a girl's got a dream, right? So I'm also friends with Michael. We've been friends for a couple years now, a few years, I should say. And again, he's an awesome lyricist, awesome poet, spoken word artist. And he had a video where he was doing a freestyle. I forget to what beat it was, but he was doing it. And I was like, yo, Mike, you did it again. Like this is dope. So I was just like, man, I wish I could do that one day. He was like, okay. And I was like, what are you talking about? He was like, let's do it. I was like, I'm not a rapper. I don't know how to write bars. That's not my forte. He was like, but you write poetry. I'm like, yeah, but writing bars is a little different, like 16 bar, 8 bar. I was like, I don't know those type of stuff. He was like, all right, if I help you, will you be down? And I'm like, yeah. So he was like, let's meet up and let's start the writing process. So if I am to be fair, Mike O would be considered my ghostwriter, right? So for the most part, he wrote my bars. I just implemented certain things where I'm like, can we change this? How about we put this there? And then towards the end, of course, I wanted to add my culture with implementing Creole and talking about how I'm Haitian. So it was a collaborative experience when it came to writing the bars, but I have to give him more of the credit because he knew how to mesh them together, because he knew how I was going to spit it. he had to teach me how to ride the cadence. He had to say, okay, this is how you're going to do it. And I had to listen to it daily and say, how do I now create this and make it my own? So what I would do is I listen. I'm like, all right, this is how I want to do it. To tell you the truth, I had to envision myself as a rapper in a music video and be like, if I was this, how would I do it? I recorded it and sent it back to him. And I said, this is how I want to sound, how I want to sound. And he was like, all right, this is dope. Let's do it. We thought it was just going to be audio or a quick thing on our phone, record it, put it up on social media. And then he was like, if we're going to do it, let's do it big. And I was like, yo, we're going to do a music video? He's like, let's do it. So again, I thank you so much to Michael. He was just really, really down for the cause to cross that off my bucket list. So with that said, the music video came out. We went in the studio first to record it. So it really felt like a true rap experience. You record it in the studio first, you get the audio, and then we're like, all right, let's shoot the music video. And in the music video, I told myself, this is your bucket list. You don't know if you're ever going to do this again. Go all out, have fun, and imagine yourself as a rapper. And that's exactly what I did, and I was shocked at myself. I was truly shocked at myself. And I felt a little salty or a little stung for a second there, because my first love is poetry, but I think people enjoyed me more as a rapper than they did as a poet. And I'm like, they're like, yeah, Shay, like, we love your poetry, but you as a rapper, we want more of that. And I'm like, more? This was just a one-time thing, but they're like, nah, this is it. So I appreciate that. So I felt the sting, but it was overthrown by such gratitude where I'm like, man, like, I didn't know I had this in me. And if I'm honest, I think I would love to do it one more time. I'm not a rapper. I'm not trying to become a rapper, but I would love to do it one more time because it makes me feel like I'm expanding as a creative. So it's making me push the envelope to be like, what else can I do next? What other beat can I ride and do all these, or what other person can I collaborate with and stuff like that? So, and the name Belle Brooklyn was just a name that I had for a while on IG, and it came, Belle means beautiful in French. And Brooklyn, I'm a Brooklyn girl, diehard Brooklyn girl. I call myself the around the way girl. And that's reference to LL Cool J's song about your typical hood girl, right? And Belle Brooklyn just mainly means two things, like beautiful Brooklyn, which means that, my love for the borough, but also me, I'm a beautiful Brooklyn girl. So that together, that's kind of the name that also transcended into the rap song. I had to retire it because as I was expanding as a creative, doing the podcast, Belle Brooklyn felt more like a rapper name or a tagline name compared to me diving more into the creative business space. Belle Brooklyn probably wouldn't have worked the best. But if I do come out with another freestyle, Belle Brooklyn will resurrect and do her thing. So yeah, that's how it happened.
And with your permission, I'll play it towards the end. And in all honesty, I have no issue with collaboration because for me, I see no issue with someone trying to transfer a message or give a message and asking for some input, right?
Mm-hmm.
I have, and I think like there's some lines here. Before it hopped off, I hopped off and switched lanes. Do the right thing. God gave me a new meaning. Glad I gave my life to the Most High. He let me be light in a dark spot.
Mm-hmm.
Now that speaks to your truth, right? So
yeah.
Mike, I mean, this collaboration tells your story in essence.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
What does before it hopped off, I hopped off and switched lanes. Is that pivoting? What does that line signify?
Okay. So what I'm saying is, before it popped off, I hopped off and switched lanes. So basically saying like, everything I was doing, right? I was in school, I was trying to figure out life. So before it popped off, meaning before things started getting a little crazy, I hopped off, meaning I hopped off of this lane that was not going in the right direction. And I switched lanes to now letting the Most High guide me.
And took
Right.
the road less traveled.
Right. So I was just like, all right, before it popped off, I'm going to hop off and switch lanes because, and I think towards later, I'm like, yo, I'm glad I gave my life to the Most High. And it was just showing that, I made the right decision of switching, because even though I always believed that the Most High would find a way to get my attention, even if it wasn't then, it would be down the road. But I'm glad that it happened when it happened, because again, mentioning earlier, my father passed away. I was just going through a lot internally where, I was in a direction where I didn't care about a lot of things, so it was around that time that I'm like, before it gets crazy, let me go in another direction. So that's what that verse meant.
And Shay, I want to express my condolences and prayer for your continued comfort.
Thank you.
I know Dad will be proud of the woman you've become.
I appreciate that.
You've confirmed another line for me as well, that school days, I ain't even see my true mission. We discussed that earlier.
Yes. Yeah, school days, I ain't even see my true mission. Because in school, yes, I graduated for journalism and broadcasting, but it's like I was still coasting. And that was around the time in college that I lost my father. So it was like, I was like on the brink of not even graduating. So it was like, man, I don't know what I'm going to do in this life. I don't know what's the next step. So me saying, even in my school days, and that also School Days was a play on the Spike Lee movie, School Days, right? So there was a little bit of Spike Lee references in there. You hear Crooklyn, that's the movie. School Days, that's a Spike Lee movie. But I said that and I was just like, I didn't see my mission yet. I knew I wanted to be in broadcasting media, but I didn't know what that looked like yet. And through my journey with God, it was still up and down. But now where I am today, the vision I have for all the things that I have in store for myself, it's like I got to write all these things down. And I just pray to God that he continues to guide me so that they come into fruition.
Shay, talk to listeners about what the confirmation feels like. Published author 2 times. And I'll ask you towards the end to mention where people can get all you have to offer. But also now, going back to a lyric here, he let me be a light in a dark spot. What you're offering now with the She Discovered podcast. Talk to us about what the confirmation, like you took us a step of faith, and individuals, collectives are saying, Shay, thank you so much for being a light in a dark spot. Talk to us about what the confirmation feels like.
I love how you're breaking down the verses. I never even thought about it that way. It's like, in writing it, but like to hear a person recite it back to you and you sharing how you took it, it really means a lot. So thank you for that. But he led me to be a light in a dark spot happened way before the podcast, right? Because when I did that freestyle, the podcast didn't exist yet. So for me, when I said that, it was basically my family and friends that were watching my conversion and my growth as a woman of God, right? And in the beginning, it wasn't easy because if I admit it, in the midst of conversion, sometimes in the beginning, you can have a real strong zeal, and that comes with judgment. Everybody, you better start changing up. This is what the word says. You better become Adventist or whatever the religion or denomination is. You better do this and do that. So although they were seeing a shift in me, sometimes it wasn't such a tasteful spoon for them to receive because it was just like, but you're so judgmental though, But I believe even in the midst of that, I believe seeds were still being sown. And I think the true light happened is when I took a step back to reevaluate what it means to be a woman of God how can I be less judgmental while still having the element of judgment? Because judgment, we do it all day, every day, right? Of what's right and wrong. But how do we implement that? How do we live that out? I think there's a difference between judging a person's actions compared to condemning them, or even judging them without context. I think that's very important, right? And we talk about how the Most High in Christ sees the heart, they see all things. We don't have that luxury of doing that, but we do have the luxury of taking time to get context, sitting down and talking to the person. So I think my light really began to shed is when I became more compassionate, more understanding. And if I'm correct, based on my family and friends, I've gotten more reception from them. They were more receptive when I started to mold those, when God started to mold those things about me, where they were like, you know what, now we feel like we can talk to you. Now we feel like we can come to you because you have more of a compassion in the midst of still promoting that you're a woman of God, right? So I think that's the element of being a light in a dark spot, because you could be a follower of God, but you can easily, based on your actions and your mindset, can easily still be darkness in a dark space. And I'll go back biblically, Pharisees, they were followers of the Torah, they were followers of the Most High, quote unquote, but their actions and how they treated one another, to the point they didn't even realize the Messiah was amongst them, right? So you can easily have a title of being man of God, woman of God, Christian, whatever, and still bring darkness in a certain place, because you're not exuding Christ's spirit. You're not exuding the Father's spirit, and I had to learn that along the way.
Shay, so, I knew this was going to happen, but here it goes. I'm like, I could land the plane now, but then, something. But so here's what I'll say. This is how I
go ahead.
My mom told me about her experience when she had me out of wedlock, quote unquote, because that's a term. It's 23-year-old scared woman who had a baby, and I was dedicated in the basement, because how churches were a little different, in terms of punishing people. So, and I say the word a little different loosely, because as you've indicated rightfully, people are still oppressed, wherever they worship, right?
Yeah.
But I'm wondering if there is something that could be said, because I'm sure you recognize the tension, because some of these issues are still apparent. They haven't gone away. And there are women who are trying desperately to hold on to something. They are seeing the cruelty in terms of the practice, but they wanna live out their faith in a meaningful way, but it's difficult because the issues haven't gone away.
Correct.
By virtue of being a podcast host, you've been thrust into a position where you not only have to give insight, but comfort and encouragement to women from all generations. So I'm trying to narrow down your audience, but I would ask you gracefully just to say something to someone who is in that space where they're not feeling a ton of hope right now with all that's happening in the world. They're exhausted, but they're trying to, as you've rightfully identified, they're trying to live out their faith in a meaningful way, but it's crushing with all that's happening in this world. How do they preserve their energy, I guess, is the way I would encapsulate it, with all that's happening?
I would say the best way I know how to give his advice is just based on my experience, right? And I even ask God to even bestow more wisdom, on me, that sometimes it doesn't always have to be an experience, but it's a mentality so aligned with the Most High that I'll be able to speak in due season for whoever, right? But I would say this: when I was in a space of having no hope, on the brink of giving up my relationship with God altogether, like this is too much. I can't live up to the rules. I feel like I'm suffocating. I feel like I have to be somebody that I'm not. I still want to follow you, God. I want to, but it's just feeling a little difficult right now.
Mm-hmm.
It took some isolation. I'll be honest. I'm very particular on telling people to isolate because I know how it could also be a dangerous thing to isolate. But I think there is no harm in taking some time to oneself to quiet out the noise. Quiet out the noise of what other people are telling you you should do, how you should worship. Not saying that you shouldn't have counsel, but I love the word discernment, because it is important to have counsel, but it is also more vital that you are able to discern which counsel is beneficial to you, your growth and relationship with God. And another way that you're able to do that is to spend time with God alone, outside of outside voices. Like, I love doing Bible study. I love watching sermons, but it came a time where I had to sit on the ground, cry out to God, be honest with God. He knows our thoughts. If I had to tell God, I'm upset right now, I'm on the verge of giving up on you, I don't care about this, I had to pour that out. I had to be honest with myself and honest with God. If you're not honest with yourself, it's hard to know what to tackle, because you haven't first addressed that within yourself. And the second thing is pouring it out to prayer and God. When we pray to God, it's not ultimately for him, but it's for ourselves. The same way my father used to say, you getting an education is not for me. I would love to see you do it, but it's ultimately for you. So God is basically saying the same thing, where he's just like, prayer, I would love to hear your voice. I would love to see it. I would love to experience it with you, but ultimately it's a benefit for you. So I would say that, and take the time to study his word and just ask questions. Don't be afraid to ask questions. Sometimes at church, from what we were told, how we were taught certain doctrines, we're afraid to ask questions. We're afraid to be like, this said that, but I'm starting to question this. What does it mean? We're afraid to come outside the box because we're afraid either to be shunned or to be called rebels or sugar shepherds, depending on the denomination. You're causing trouble. But I think it's important, as the Father says, come, let us reason together, that it's important for us to be like, well, I don't understand this, Pastor, or I don't understand this, whomever, and I need to understand it, because ultimately we have freedom of choice. We're not robots. So ultimately we need to understand things from the fullest depth of our heart and our mind, so that we can truly have what I love, the verse, let this mind be in you, which was also in Christ Jesus, right? Philippians 2:5, where it's just like that renewal of the mind comes with questions. It comes with humbleness. It comes with pouring out of one's soul in all honesty. And at the same time, it takes moments of being alone to do those things without outside voices. And I think once that's done, it's not going to be easy, but once that's done, you will start to feel, from my experience, the Spirit of God speak to you in different ways. Either it be through people, either it be through experiences, or through him himself within your mind, to be like, here's how I'm going to guide you, and here's how I'm with you. Because the moment that I felt that I wanted to give up on God, the song that came up for me was Fred Hammond. I love Fred Hammond and Kirk Franklin, but Fred Hammond was the song, You Were Much Closer Than I Realized. I love that song. And I remember I boo-hooed in my room because I felt the presence of God saying, when you thought I was far, I was actually right next to you. So I think that's the best I could give in this climate that we're in, where it could be very scary. We start thinking about what the future is going to hold, what today holds. Take those times to really quiet out social media, TV, whatever the case may be, and really sit and ask God to guide you. From time to time, I still need to do that, and really sit with honesty and humility with oneself.
Powerful. I admire your resolve, Shay. And I want to publicly thank my own mom for not throwing in the towel as well.
Right.
And for the many members of your community who are giving it another go and not and finding support in fellowship and community. I want to commend you for the work that you do, Shay. A
Thank
poet, author, hip hop artist.
Let's be careful with that one.
Podcast host and doing a great work. Shay, please share ways people can follow your journey. I'll put it in the podcast notes, but please share all the ways they can connect with you as well.
I think for the most part, my main work is done via the podcast She Discovered. So I'll say that to listen to She Discovered podcast, you will find me on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, and Spotify. Once you put She Discovered, the podcast will come up. I'm also on Instagram as She Discovered Podcast. If you want to see certain episodes that are also available on YouTube, or even the poetry, the visual poetry I was talking about, Lover and Partner, that's also available on YouTube, and you could type She Discovered. So, or She Discovered Podcast, I should say. So more likely to see the content and what I'm doing, you should go to She Discovered Podcast. If you are interested in the poetry book that I did, if you type in Untold Emotions into Amazon, you should be able to find that as well.
Awesome. Shay Cèna, thank you so much for being a guest on the What a Word podcast.
Thank you.
Inspired by your journey, and I look forward to connecting with you again soon.
I appreciate that. I appreciate everything. Thank you.
Blessings. Most welcome.
You too.
Yeah, first off, if you don't like God bars, you can leave now before I get this verse off. Can't tell who's really worse off, cause with these punches, I'ma bruise sinners or leave a church sore. See, there are those that love to boast on their own religion, but listen, much is required when there's more that's given. Having debates online won't prove your soul is driven. The difference, less of your talking and more you're living. They see the signs, it's time they lining up to watch. Don't back down, it's paramount, we hike it up a notch. To plant a seed so they see our deeds. What I mean, it's Billie Jean, we supposed to be lighting up the block. It's worth a shot, not rocket science, but applied physics. Cause when it's authentic, we don't provide gimmicks. We're the witness to prepare for the Messiah's visit, and see him coming with the clouds like a flying nimbus. Yeah, I know many ain't gonna get that reference. Don't mind me, I'm just doing my dad's business. Keep your paper, the rap showed you it's that gifted. Told you I was lying though, this cat's different.
Bell Brooklyn, true to the game like 2 for 10 on the Ave. The real Fulton, not a vet, still I'm a serious threat. Haters looking like, are you done yet? Nah, I'm still cooking. You know Shay, cause I'm smooth butter, I'm true gutter. Who wanna look close and see my true colors? Before my life's gone, I'ma be an icon. Get the picture? Yeah, that's my new cover. So Brooklyn, but here's a cool vision. School days, I ain't even see my true mission. Before it popped off, I hopped off and switched lanes to do the right thing. That gave me a new meaning. Spirit won the fight with my own pride. Glad I gave my life to the Most High. He let me be a light in a dark spot to keep my people fed. I'm the rice with the sauce. Belle femme haïtienne, mais déjà comme ça. We laid the bars down. Woosah. Y'all could calm down now.